Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're going to break down a condition that you've almost certainly heard of, but might not know that much about: epilepsy. We're going to get into what it is, what's happening in the brain when it occurs, and how it's actually managed. Okay, let's get right into it.
So what is epilepsy really? Well, the official definition is a chronic neurological disorder. But the two words you really need to focus on are recurrent and unprovoked. This means it's not just a one-time seizure caused by something like a really high fever. Nope, this is about a long-term condition where the brain has a tendency to have seizures seemingly out of the blue.
And this is not some rare, obscure condition. Just look at this number. About 50 million people around the world are living with epilepsy. That's a huge number of people, which makes it so important for all of us to have a better grasp of what it's all about. Now, if you want a simple way to picture what's going on, this is it. Think of a seizure as a sudden, chaotic electrical storm inside the brain. All the normal, organized signals that let us move, think, and feel just go haywire for a bit. This idea of a storm is really the key to understanding the whole thing. Okay, first up, the brain's electrical storm. We're going to zoom in on what's actually going on when one of these storms hits, and you'll see they can actually look pretty different from one another.
Right, so not all brainstorms are the same. They get split into two big categories based on where they start. You've got focal seizures, which kick off in one specific area, in one half of the brain. Then you have generalized seizures, and those involve both sides of the brain, right from the very start.
And even within those two groups, there's a lot of variety. For example, with a focal aware seizure, a person might be totally conscious but just experience a strange smell or feeling. But with a focal impaired awareness seizure, they might seem confused and do repetitive things like smacking their lips without knowing it. On the generalized side, you have the one most people think of, the tonic-clonic seizure. But you also have something called an absence seizure, which can look just like someone is zoning out or daydreaming for a few seconds.
You know, for some people, that storm doesn't just show up unannounced. They get a kind of forecast, which is called an aura. Now, this warning is actually the very beginning of a focal seizure. It can be a weird smell, a super strong feeling of déjà vu, or even a sudden wave of fear. It's the brain's first little signal that the storm is brewing.
So we know what a seizure is, but the next big question is, why? What causes the surge? Let's dig into the science behind this electrical storm.
Okay, your brain is all about balance, a really delicate balance. It's kind of like driving a car. You have signals that act like the gas pedal, the go signals, that tell your brain cells to fire. And then you have signals that act like the brake, the stop signals. A seizure happens when that balance gets thrown off. Either there's way too much go or just not enough stop.
So what throws that balance off? Well, as you can see here, there's no single answer. The causes are all over the map. It could be something structural, like scar tissue from a head injury. It might be genetic, running in the family. It can even be triggered by an infection. And what's really important to note is that for a whole lot of people, the exact cause is never found. It's just unknown.
And this slide kind of builds on that. Some of the biggest risk factors include things like a family history, which points to that genetic link, or physical things like serious head injury or a stroke, which can damage the brain's wiring. Even an infection that reaches the brain, or an injury that happens around birth, can create the conditions for epilepsy to develop down the road.
All right, so we've got the what and the why. That brings us to the how. How do doctors actually diagnose this, and what can be done to manage it? Let's get into it.
Finding out if someone has epilepsy is like a piece of detective work. And you know what the most important clue is? The person's story. A super detailed description of what happened is step one. After that comes a physical exam, and then the high-tech stuff, like an EEG to actually record the brain's electrical waves, and an MRI to look for any physical issues in the brain's structure.
Once the diagnosis is confirmed, what's the goal? It's really simple: control the seizures. The whole point of treatment is to stop those electrical storms from happening, or at least make them happen way less often, with the fewest side effects. That's why doctors usually try to find just one medication that works well. And there's a whole toolkit to make that happen. As you can see, medications, known as AEDs, are the first thing doctors turn to. But if those don't work, there are other powerful options. We're talking about very specialized surgery, therapeutic diets, and even devices that can help regulate the brain's electrical activity.
And here's a number that's really encouraging. For most people, treatment works. About 70% of people with epilepsy can get their seizures completely under control with medication. That is a massive success and a testament to how far we've come.
This brings us to our final and maybe most important section, living beyond the seizure. This is about practical stuff that everyone should know, and it's about remembering the human side of all this.
Okay, this slide is incredibly important. If you ever see someone having a convulsive seizure, knowing the right things to do and what not to do is critical. The do's are simple. Help them to the ground, roll them gently onto their side, move anything dangerous out of the way, and time the seizure. The do-nots are just as crucial. Do not hold them down, and please, never ever put anything in their mouth. That's an old myth, and it's really dangerous.
And finally, we have to remember that living with epilepsy goes way beyond the seizures themselves. There's a huge social and emotional impact. People have to deal with stigma, with practical things like not being able to drive, and with the very real mental health challenges, like anxiety and isolation, that can come with having a chronic illness.
So we'll leave you with this thought. We've talked a lot about the science, about the brain's electrical storms. But maybe the real takeaway is this. When we take the time to understand something that seems scary or confusing, we replace fear with knowledge. And when we do that, we're not just learning about a medical condition. We're taking a real step toward building a kinder, more empathetic world for everyone. Thanks for tuning in.